All right, we are live on Facebook and YouTube, and we're live over here on Instagram. Today we're going to talk about all things editor. Yes, it's how to find an editor, but there are so many other things that go into the editing process that we need to talk about. So I've got a whole list today, 7 different tips that we're going to talk through about how to find your ideal editor for your book, how to know when you need an editor, all the different things that go along with getting your book ready for an editor. So we're just going to cover those. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to talk about is how to know when you're ready for an editor, when your book is ready for an editor. Now, let me define editor real quickly. We're talking about a professional editor here, someone that you hire to edit your book. There are different types, and we will get to that in a little bit. So we're going to talk about the different types of editing that you may need on your book. But first of all, you need to know when you're ready for an editor. The short answer is when you've done everything you can on your book. That's the short answer. So what that looks like is going through the entire self-editing process. You have gone through all the drafts that you as an author are able to go through. You've tweaked everything you possibly can, and you've put everything into it that you can. Then once you have done that, it is time to pass it off to an editor, a professional, someone that can help you take your book to the next level, polish it up, get another pair of eyes on it, and really just give your book the best chance it could have. Okay, so 2, what books need an editor? Well, all of them. Every book needs an editor. However, or to put another way, every book can benefit from having an editor. However, I do acknowledge that sometimes authors just simply cannot afford to hire a professional editor. I am not here to tell you that you cannot publish your book if you can't afford a professional editor. I get it. I have published books without hiring an editor. So I completely understand. It may not be in the budget for you right now, but there are ways that you can self-edit to bring your book to the best it possibly can be. Now, there are certain skill sets that you should have as an author to be able to publish your book with excellence without hiring an editor. Things like grammar and punctuation, those should be some of your strengths. If those are not your strengths, then I would probably save up for an editor that can do that for you. And again, we'll talk about the different types in a minute. But so just make sure that you are being honest with yourself about your skill set. But again, if it's the only thing that's holding you back is that editing thing, and you feel like you can edit it yourself to a higher level, you're going to obviously put more time into the editing process than someone who is hiring a professional editor might do. But it can be done. But again, if you can afford it, if you can put it in the budget, if you can save up whatever it is, every book can benefit from it. Even books that have been published without an editor, they can all benefit from a professional, because you can get a second pair of eyes, or sometimes a third pair of eyes, depending on how many different editors you hire, or proofreaders. We'll get to what that looks like in a minute. The more eyes on your manuscript, the better. The more people you have working on it, the better, because they can just bring out things that the other people would not catch. So that's kind of my little caveat there. So, okay, so we covered how to know when you're ready for an editor and what kind of books need an editor. So let's talk about what you can do before hiring a professional, before you hire an editor, or before you can still hire the editor, but before you actually give them your manuscript to work on. These are the type of people that you can bring into the process that may be paid or may not be, but they're people who can give you feedback to help with your self-editing, or to help inform like what type of editing you might need. And we'll talk about the types of editing at the next point, actually. But before we get there, a lot of authors choose to employ, I say employ, not necessarily pay them. They're called alpha readers or critique partners. Now, those are people, you as the author get to decide when you would send them your manuscript. But typically this is as the first draft is being written, or just after, or sometime in between. Like if I guess in a perfect world, it would be you'd write the first draft, send it to your critique partner, and then once you get it back from them, that would be that gap time that you need as an author to take time off of your book, to let your mind kind of step away from it for a minute so that you can have fresh eyes when you go back to it to do your self-editing. So it probably would be the ideal time. Now, your critique partner may not have that particular time slot to be able to go through your book, or you may be working on other projects and it's just not top of mind, and so you may send it. So it's really up to you as the author, and it could vary based on the different types of books too. So just be cognizant of that, but that is an option, an alpha reader or a critique partner. Someone else is a beta reader. So these are typically the alpha reader. You may have one or two or three. I mean, it really depends on your writing process and the authors that you have contact with. But beta readers typically aren't going to be as detailed. They are going to see it after you've done some editing on it yourself. I like to use beta readers when I am in the self-editing process and maybe I get stuck and I just like cannot see the forest for the trees, or is it the other way around? Anyway, sometimes I just can't see the way forward. So I need another opinion. So I use beta readers for that. Also, it's usually before it's about ready, like where you would send it to an editor to kind of clean up and finalize. So I also use beta readers to kind of get in a kind of idea of where, like how the book is landing with people. So beta readers can be other authors, but they can just be readers as well. And they give you more overview. I, in the past, have sent like a list of questions for beta readers, but they give you more of like an overview about how the story went, what they thought of certain characters, whether certain things hit home, if the pacing was good, like things like that, to where the critique partner may be more detailed about some certain things depending on your critique partner, and it's totally fine how it is. Just whoever you decide to work with as a critique partner, and you can typically work it as a partnership. So you critique their books, they critique yours. So it really just depends on the relationship you have with the person, what you want to get out of it, and their skill set as well. So you may need to test some critique partners. You may not jive with the first ones you find, and that's okay. You just get all the feedback you can, beta readers and all of that. The third type is sensitivity readers. So they kind of work like a beta reader, but they would be looking specifically for things if you were writing about sensitive topics, or something that you might not know about, but other people would have some strong feelings around. If you have specific trigger warnings, or if you're just not familiar with a certain type of writing or a certain topic, and you feel like your story takes on that topic that you might not be well versed in. So those are types of things. And then another way to get feedback is editor samples. Now, I'm not encouraging you to just go out and find 10 different editors, get their samples, and then not try to work with them. But if you do find an editor that you are interested in working with, samples are a great way to kind of vet them and get a feel for their style of editing. And as a bonus to you as the author, once you get that sample back, you can see their feedback. It gives you a good determination if you want to work with them. But if you don't want to work with them, they still may have some good feedback for you in there. So also, don't discount the information you get from those sample edits. Again, don't just go with a bunch of editors and get them all to give you sample edits, and then you get like half the book edited. That's not cool, people. That's, karma's not going to come back to you very kindly on that. But if you are considering hiring an editor, and I do recommend getting quotes, getting samples done, everything you can to make sure that you're working with the right editor for your book. Okay, so let's talk about different types of editing. So there are generally about four different types of editing that I'm going to cover. There could be some like breakdown here. They could be split up. And this actually works very close in line of what the self-editing drafts are. And I'm not talking very clearly today. Anyway, it works pretty much in line with the different types of the different drafts of self-editing, which actually I should have a blog post coming out tomorrow on that. So if you are following my blog, I will be posting about that, and we'll talk about the different drafts and self-editing, which are also closely related to the different types of editors. So let's talk about that. So the first one is developmental editor. They are going to be looking for things like character arcs and the overall story. They're going to look for plot holes. They are going to make sure that your book is developmentally sound. So the story is good. It's told well, kind of on an overarching way. They don't get into the nitty-gritty necessarily, but they are going to address characters and locations and setting and things like that. All of the things that go into the bones of a story, they're going to address those things, sometimes make suggestions, sometimes help with rewrites, things like that. So that is what a developmental editor does. Now, the second type of editing is a content or a line editor. Now, I do edit books for authors on occasion. I actually do have some openings in 2021 for that. But that's not the point of this live stream. The point of the live stream is I tell you that so that I know what these editors do, because I do this. So content and line editing helps with pacing and readability, and also kind of like grammar and punctuation too, but not as much. The content or line editor is really making sure that your book, line by line, each sentence, each paragraph is readable. It's not going to trip people up. It's smooth. It's clear. It helps tell the story in the best way possible, but in a way that helps it really flow and helps the reader really get into it. And like I mentioned, pacing, it helps the reader stay engaged with the book. The reason this is so important is the reader's going to stop reading if they're bored, right? You can have the perfect story and you can have the perfect plot, and all of the elements of the story can be there, but if they're getting tripped up by the line by line writing, they're not going to keep reading and they're going to miss your amazing story. So that's why content and line editing is so important, whether it's in the self-editing process or hiring a professional editor to do it. It's really important. Okay, and so the third type of editing is copy editing. This is where you're going to get into the grammar and the punctuation and all the nitty-gritty technical details. So even if you don't hire a content or line editor, if that's like your area of expertise, you've done the developmental edits, you have betas kind of inform you on that, where developmentally it's going, you've plugged all your plot holes, you got everything smoothed out, you are fairly good at making the book readable, and you just need some help with the grammar and the punctuation. You just need someone to help clean it up. This is where a copy editor would come in. And by the way, these types of editors typically are, I'm going from like most expensive to least expensive. So that's why I say sometimes you may not need all of the types of editing. You may just need to choose an editor based on the type of editing you need and your weaknesses as an author. Sometimes as you're in the self-editing process, you discover where your strengths are and where your weaknesses are. And it's best to hire out your weaknesses. So if you are not strong in grammar and punctuation, a copy editor is a great person to hire to help smooth out your book. And the last type of editing is proofreading, kind of editing. Called proofreading. Basically, they're looking for kind of all the things that the other people are also looking for, but they're just trying to catch the mistakes. They're going behind all of the work that's already been done on your book. And again, you can hire, if you have the budget for it, you can hire a developmental editor, a content line editor, you can hire a copy editor and a proofreader. Now, probably not a lot of us, especially indie authors, don't have that budget, especially when we're starting out. And for me, for example, I do a content and line edit / copy edit, and then I do a proofread at the end as part of it's included in there. So sometimes they're all like joined together. But proofreading is just someone to come behind all the other editing that's been done and do a final like read through, just looking for mistakes. So it usually doesn't cost a ton of money per word, and a lot of editors do charge per word, but it's still a good thing to have somebody else, another pair of eyes on your stuff. So, all right, so let's get into where to look for editors. Okay, so there's a few different ways to look for this. Now, this is probably the most challenging part of hiring an editor, is finding an editor to hire. You have to find an editor in the first place to be able to get a sample and ask them questions and things like that. So there's a couple of different ways I identified. Ask around. So any author friends that you know, any on Instagram or Facebook, I mean, even some of them have YouTube channels. If there are any authors that you know and have a relationship with at all and can ask, hey, do you know of any good editors? They can usually point you in the right direction. So just asking around, word of mouth is great. Keeping your eyes open on social media. Some people will typically, post that they are an editor and they're looking for clients. Maybe they'll post a testimonial, or they'll just say, hey, booking into 2022, or whatever it is. So just keep your eyes out if you're looking for an editor. And of course, that's kind of obvious. So, and you'll probably be doing that anyway. Okay, so yeah, like I said, your favorite social media platform. Look at all, you can search even hashtags on Instagram, editors of Instagram. I think Find an Editor doesn't have a lot of hits on it, but just look for the different hashtags. Look for people that just tag editing. You might be able to find an editor that way. And check out books that you like. Sometimes they'll list their editor in the acknowledgments. If there is someone that you're like, wow, this book really impresses me. I didn't notice many mistakes. It was really easy to read. I felt like it flowed really well. A lot of times that kind of flow and that, the readability comes from hiring an editor. So check with that author if you know them or can connect with them. Sometimes they're in the acknowledgments and you don't have to really do much work other than reading the acknowledgments and then doing a Google search. But check with, other books. See if somebody, see if you can find an editor that way. So there's a few ways to look for editors that way. There are also, I think there are some like affiliation, like groups and stuff that have editors that maybe are certified in a certain thing, or they pay to be a member of those things. Those can be good places to go. They also have some companies that just have a lot of editors, and they'll, hire out based on what jobs they have and things like that. Those other options were really to find like an independent editor, which is mostly what I do. I just connect with authors myself and then work with them directly. So there's a lot of different ways to do that. I know it can be a challenge. It can be a challenge, but the biggest thing is to listen to your gut when you're hiring an editor. If you feel like something isn't quite right, keep doing your research. Editing can cost a lot of money. It can feel like a lot of money because they're charging per word, and maybe you have a big manuscript, or maybe it could be small, but it still can add up when you're calculating per word. So make sure you're doing your research. You don't want to spend your hard-earned money. And please, I have heard this over and over as an editor, where authors have reached out to me, or authors have reached out to me on behalf of someone else and said, my friend is looking for an editor. She hired somebody and they tortured her book and to not do a good job. And my heart just breaks at that, because they spent their hard-earned money on someone that just made their book worse, or just didn't do anything at all. And it's so sad for me to hear that. So definitely do your research up front before you do anything else. Make sure you are getting a sample from them. And actually, that's my next thing, what questions to ask. So we're going to talk about that briefly, and then we'll wrap up. So as a side note, I pulled up some questions and answers. You can see my little cheat sheet here I've got. IG over here. Yeah, so I got a little cheat sheet of different questions you ask your editor, and then the different responses you're looking for. I actually put all of this into a free ebook that's up on my website. I've got it linked in the Facebook and YouTube, and then hopefully I'll get an upload this live to IGTV, and I'll link it there as well, so that you guys can get this free ebook. It'll walk you through a lot of what we talked today, but it'll give you kind of just step-by-step. These are the types of questions you want to ask an editor. I'm not going to go through all of them for time, but you can check out that free ebook. Just sign up and give me your email address, and I'll send you the ebook, and it'll be simple. And then it'll give you kind of like a checklist of things to ask and things to look for. And so you know that you're hiring someone. Obviously, you can't know 100% that it's going to be the perfect fit, but you can help smooth that over and hopefully be confident in your choice when you do decide to hire that editor. So things to ask. How long will it take them to edit? Can you get it sooner? Sometimes authors will charge an additional fee to get it sooner, but it can be done. So it depends on the editor, their availability, and what they decide to offer, but it is an option. What type of editing services you offer. We talked about that, developmental content, whatever. If you're not sure, a lot of times an editor, when they do the sample, and this is why me as an editor, I always ask for a sample, because I can tell if I can help or not. Usually just from the sample, I can tell if it needs developmental help, which I do not do. So I can say, you aren't quite ready for me yet. You should look for a developmental editor. And it just, it just helps me get an idea and a feel for the book itself. Will you edit a sample of my book? Am I under obligation to hire you if you do this? Now, this is just my experience. This could be different based on, because I've not met all the editors out there, but my experience and what I follow is, I've been editing for a few years now, but I still do offer a no obligation sample edit. And that's how I phrase it, because it's not necessarily free, because I do charge for those words in the full project, because it actually, after I do the sample, when I start the project, I start from the beginning again and go through. So the sample itself will not cost, and if you decide not to go through me, then it's no charge. But if it's in the full, it's just added into the full cost of the book, because I do include that in the content edit as well as the proofread. So, but some editors do charge for a sample. If they've been doing it a long time, they have a large client list, sometimes they will charge to do a sample. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just how it is. If you're hiring an editor with more experience, that may be something you'll come across. So just be aware of that. I would not suggest going with an editor unless you have a really compelling reason to know that they know what they're doing and that they're a good fit for your book. So I wouldn't suggest hiring them without them doing a sample for you, but that of course is up to you. Do you charge per word per project? So you need to know like how they charge, what the rate would be, their payment terms, all of that kind of like nitty-gritty stuff. Ask about their experience. You can always hire a newbie, but again, get that sample so that you know that they know what they're doing and that they do it well, and that they're a good fit for your book as well. What types of books do they like to edit? Do they have specific genres they edit or won't edit? That could be a question to ask. I know from my experience, I pretty much will edit most things. If there's content in there that I am not comfortable with, that I don't want my name associated with, I will turn down a project. But other than that, I'm pretty open, and I would suspect that a lot of editors are, but there may be some, especially that have been doing it a while and they have a client base, they may only work with certain genres because that's the genres they prefer. There's other questions here to ask, but one thing I really want to point out is you need to find an editor that will maintain your unique writing voice. And I even listed that as a specific question to ask. How do they maintain it? Because it's so important. That's a lot of that, and I've heard that too from authors, that they hire an editor and then they completely take their voice out of it. And it's just not their book anymore. And it doesn't feel like them anymore. The editor is there to enhance your book. They're not there to write it for you or rewrite it. It's supposed to enhance your natural writing voice. It's supposed to bring that out. So while they can make changes and suggest changes, and of course you can always reject changes that editors make, although generally they are done from a place of professionalism, and so they generally would improve the story in the book. But you definitely want to make sure they maintain your unique writing voice. I mean, it's just, you can't, and that's again why you do the sample, because if you feel like they took your heart out of it, they're not the editor for you. Trust me. They're just not. So keep looking. And again, it can be stressful to have to keep looking for an editor, and you might want to just hire the first one you find because you don't want to deal with it anymore. But it really is important up front for you to do your research. And then make sure that you have a contract. Always have a contract. It doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be super, super detailed. It doesn't have to be like this long legalese drafted up by, a lawyer that charges thousands of dollars an hour. But it's fairly simple to put together a contract just to outline the terms for both of you so that you know what your rights are or expectations, things like that. So always have a contract. and go with editors that will do a contract for you, just so that you guys are on the same page. It's just really the best way to cover your bases. Okay, so you want to make sure that this is kind of like, those are the questions to ask. And again, there's more in that ebook. I kind of covered a lot of them, but there's more in the free ebook that it's linked to below, or I linked to in the IGTV video. But some things that you want to be looking for when you're looking at your editor, asking them questions, you want to make sure they're responsive. Now, of course, you shouldn't expect that they answer your email within 2 minutes of you sending it. But you want to make sure that they're going to get back to you, that they're going to give you feedback, that if you ask a question, they're not going to treat you like you're stupid for asking a question, things like that, just so that you have a good rapport with them. Of course, we talked about unique writing voice. You've got to make sure that they're going to maintain that. Again, do the sample, look for that, make sure that they keep the heart, like your heart, in your book. That they're upfront about their charges. There's no hidden fees. And I know that can be a little bit tricky to think through, but if you ask certain questions, you can kind of get a feel for if they're going to charge you hidden fees. So just be on the lookout for that. Of course, I said contract. Definitely always ask for contract. If they have any testimonials or reviews, you can ask for if they have anything like that. Now, sometimes you may have found them because they posted a review, and obviously you don't have to ask them at that point. But just so you can kind of get a feel for what they've done in the past and what other authors have said about them and their work. Make sure their services that they provide line up with your needs. You don't want to hire a developmental editor if you need help with copy editing. So make sure that those things align. And that's another plug for self-editing, is when you do your self-editing, you know where your strengths and weaknesses are. And so you know you've identified, hopefully, if you've gone through the entire self-editing process, you can identify where you need those gaps filled in and where you need professional help on your book. Yeah, so that kind of covers most of it. Again, that wasn't quite everything on this page, but it's most of it. So check out the ebook. Like I said, it's free, so you have that for all of your books going forward. You can go through and look at all of the different questions and answers and how to know when you're ready to get a book edited, and just some, also a little bit of inspiration, motivation in there, because I love to throw that in there. But I just wanted, and we're coming up on a half hour, so this is good timing. So I just wanted to help you guys get an overview of like the editing process, looking for an editor, how you actually narrow things down, what kinds of things you're looking for, all of that, because it can be a super stressful thing. I even had, when I announced this live stream, I had someone come to me, they're like, yeah, I get this question a lot from authors. And I'm like, I don't know what to tell them. So hopefully this video helps. And like I said, I will try to get it up on IG. I had an issue last week and I wasn't able to upload it. I'll try to do the replay on IG, and then on Facebook and YouTube, those replays are up there for you guys to watch again, so that you can see, go back to these questions, go back to the things I've talked about, things to consider when you're ready, when you're done with the self-editing process and you're ready to hire an editor. Refer back to this video so that you know what to ask. Download that free ebook so that you can go back to that and you have all the questions kind of right in front of you in black and white. Yeah, it can be a frustrating process, but take your time, do it right, so that you can give your book the best it can be, and give your book the best chance it can have in the marketplace, Amazon, wherever you choose to sell it. You want it to do well, and your content, the book itself, is just going to really shine if you hire the best editor possible. Okay, so if anyone have any questions before I sign off, we can talk about some questions about editing. That's kind of what I had to go over. And again, I go back. If you are looking at an editor and you are concerned that something might not quite be right, don't hire them. Keep looking. You just always, always, always listen to your intuition, listen to your gut, because that is not going to lead you astray. And if you are concerned that something might happen, but you're frustrated that the process is taking so long, you're going to be in more pain if you hire that person just to get it over with than if you do your due diligence up front. So, all right, so it doesn't look like anyone has any questions, so we're going to sign off. Thank you guys so much for coming. I really hope this is a lot of good information for you, helps you find that ideal editor, helps you get your book the best it can be, because obviously, like working with an editor can be an amazing process if you find someone that's a good fit for you in your book. It can be like eye-opening how polished it make your book look, and helps, just put your best work out into the world. Okay, I will talk to you guys next week. Thank you so much for coming. Bye, Instagram. Bye, Facebook, YouTube. Talk to you later.